For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
One morning in 1996, 24-year-old Caleb Ortega left his remote base camp deep in Brazil's Upper Xingu Basin. A gap-year traveler, he ventured alone into the dense Amazon jungle's Blackwater tributary, eager to photograph ancient petroglyphs. He never returned. Despite an extensive multinational search operation spanning treacherous terrain and vast river networks, Caleb Ortega vanished without a trace. For 29 agonizing years, his family lived with an unbearable, gnawing uncertainty, haunted by unanswered questions. Then, just last year, an extraordinary and unexpected discovery was made. A unique, cord-wrapped pendant surfaced from the depths of the Amazon, bearing faint traces of human sweat salts and foreign fabric fibers. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Caleb Ortega, a young man lost to the Amazon's impenetrable embrace. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. The year was 1996. Deep within the remote expanse of Brazil's Upper Xingu Basin, a landscape defined by its dense verdant jungle and the winding arteries of Blackwater tributaries, a small expedition navigated the emerald labyrinth of the Amazon. It was a place of breathtaking, untamed beauty, yet inherently fraught with the perils of a truly wild frontier. Among the intrepid travelers was Caleb Ortega, a 24-year-old gap-year student. His youthful wanderlust and an insatiable desire for adventure had drawn him to this distant corner of the world. Caleb's primary purpose was to immerse himself in the Amazon's unique ecosystems and perhaps to document the ancient cultural imprints he hoped to discover. He was an amateur photographer, keen to capture the raw essence of the jungle. Accompanying him were Marcia Araujo, a seasoned guide whose extensive knowledge of the Xingu Basin was invaluable, and Tiago Pinedo, an interpreter whose linguistic skills were crucial for navigating the complex cultural landscape and facilitating communication with local communities. Together, they formed a small, self-reliant team, venturing into a challenging, unforgiving territory. On a humid morning, the expedition's course veered towards an unforeseen tragedy. Caleb expressed his intention to venture alone a short distance from their base camp. His objective was to photograph a cluster of ancient petroglyphs, reportedly situated along a faint path. He packed his camera equipment, a small water skin, and a basic compass, assuring Marcia and Tiago he would return before dusk. Accustomed to Caleb's independent spirit, his companions offered their usual cautions, watching as he disappeared into the thick emerald curtain of the jungle. It was the last time anyone would see Caleb Ortega. As the afternoon wore on, a subtle unease began to settle over the camp. Dusk approached, then faded into the oppressive darkness of the Amazonian night, yet Caleb did not return. The initial calls of his name soon escalated into frantic shouts, echoing unanswered into the vast wilderness. The initial worry quickly transformed into a dawning dread that something catastrophic had occurred. A rudimentary, desperate search of the immediate perimeter around the base camp yielded nothing but the impenetrable wall of the rainforest, offering no clue, no sign. Caleb Ortega had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an expedition team in shock and a mystery that would baffle investigators for decades. The immediate aftermath of Caleb Ortega's disappearance plunged Marcia Araujo and Tiago Pinedo into a desperate, frantic search. For days they combed the dense jungle surrounding their base camp, their calls for Caleb swallowed by the vast silence of the rainforest. Their efforts, however valiant, were severely hampered by the sheer scale of the Amazon and the limited resources at their disposal. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call offered a fleeting false hope, only to be replaced by the deepening reality of their predicament. As the days turned into a week, the gravity of the situation prompted external intervention. Brazilian authorities were alerted, initiating a formal search and rescue operation. Yet the logistical nightmare of deploying significant resources to such a remote section of the Upper Xingu Basin became immediately apparent. Helicopters struggled with dense canopy, ground teams faced impassable terrain and navigational challenges. Conventional search methods proved largely ineffective against the Amazon's unforgiving expanse. Marcia and Tiago provided their testimonies to the arriving investigators, recounting Caleb's last known movements, his stated intentions, and the chilling moment he vanished into the foliage. Their accounts were marked by a palpable sense of fear and helplessness, their initial theories ranging from a tragic accident or an animal attack to the possibility of Caleb having simply become hopelessly lost. Each possibility offered no comfort, only further questions. Among those consulted was Dr. Ruth Albright, an anthropologist with extensive field experience in the Xingu Basin and a deep understanding of its indigenous communities. Her expertise was sought to gauge the likelihood of Caleb encountering uncontacted tribes or falling victim to local, less understood dangers. Dr. Albright offered insights into the cultural sensitivities and the inherent risks of traversing such an isolated region, but even her knowledge could not conjure a concrete lead. Crucially, the search yielded no physical evidence whatsoever. There was no trace of Caleb's backpack, his camera, or any other personal effects. Most critically, there was no sign of Caleb Ortega himself. The jungle had swallowed him whole, leaving behind an impenetrable void. As weeks bled into months, the search became increasingly futile, the hope of finding Caleb alive fading into a grim acceptance. The emotional toll on Marcia and Tiago was immense, their initial resolve eroded by the mounting realization that Caleb might never be found. Eventually, the official search operation, having exhausted all viable avenues, was scaled back, then formally suspended, leaving a profound void and an unsolved mystery. The official suspension of the search operation did not, however, bring an end to the pervasive questions surrounding Caleb Ortega's disappearance. For his family, and for those who had journeyed with him, his fate remained an agonizing unknown, a gnawing void that defied closure. The jungle had not merely claimed a life, it had swallowed the very explanation of that life's end. 29 years would pass in the wake of Caleb's vanishing. Nearly 3 decades transformed a tragic incident into a notorious cold case, its file growing thicker with unanswered questions and increasingly faded reports. While the world outside moved on, advancing through new technologies and global shifts, the central mystery of Caleb Ortega remained frozen in time, a static point of anguish for those left behind. The passage of years only deepened the enigma. So over the decades, speculation circulated, fueled by the sheer unpredictability of the Amazon. Theories ranged from the plausible to the almost mythical. Had Caleb, disoriented, succumbed to the unforgiving elements, lost forever in the trackless wilderness? Was he the victim of a sudden, brutal animal attack, his remains swiftly absorbed by the voracious ecosystem? Or did something more sinister transpire, an encounter with unknown human elements in a region often beyond the reach of law? The vastness of the Amazon allowed for an endless array of possibilities, none of them provable, each adding to the torment of uncertainty. For Caleb's family, the lack of a body or any definitive explanation for his disappearance constituted an enduring ordeal. The inability to conduct a proper mourning, to lay their son and brother to rest, perpetuated a unique form of grief, one without a clear endpoint. Their son had simply ceased to be, leaving behind only absence. The official file, once active and urgent, slowly migrated from current investigations to the archives, becoming a dusty collection of maps, interview notes, and forensic reports, all leading to the same dead end. Caleb Ortega's case officially became inactive, a statistic in the long roster of those lost to the Amazon's impenetrable secrets. 29 years after Caleb Ortega vanished, the impenetrable veil shrouding his fate began to fray, not through a new search effort or a confession, but through an unexpected, almost incidental discovery. Years after the official search concluded, a cord-wrapped pendant surfaced, a small, unassuming artifact traded within a remote indigenous community. It was not immediately recognized as significant, merely another item within the complex network of intertribal exchanges and occasional dealings with external parties. Its journey from the heart of the Amazon to the attention of the outside world was slow and circuitous, eventually finding its way into a collection being catalogued by an anthropological research team working in the broader Xingu region. The pendant's true significance became apparent only after a routine forensic examination. Standard protocols for new acquisitions included analysis for biological and material residues. The results were startling. Embedded within the woven cords and the pendant surface were microscopic traces of human sweat salts, and more profoundly, foreign fabric fibers. The presence of sweat salts indicated prolonged human contact, hinting at a potential DNA source, while the foreign fabric fibers were a direct, undeniable link to the world outside the Amazonian tribes. These were not materials native to the traditional garments of the region's indigenous peoples. They were unequivocally from an external source, an echo of the modern world. This minuscule artifact, no larger than a thumb, breathed new life into the decades-old cold case. For the first time since 1996, there was a tangible, physical clue directly connected to Caleb Ortega. The fibers offered the tantalizing possibility of a match to clothing he might have worn, while the sweat salts could, with advanced analysis, yield genetic material. This was the first concrete trace, a faint but undeniable signal from the depths of the jungle. Dr. Ruth Albright, whose initial consultation had proven fruitless decades prior, found her expertise in cultural artifacts and indigenous trade networks invaluable once more. Her knowledge was now crucial in attempting to retrace the pendant's journey, to understand how this singular object, bearing such critical evidence, could have emerged from the very heart of Caleb Ortega's last known location. The possibility of closure, once a distant dream, now shimmered on the horizon. The revelation of the cord-wrapped pendant, with its microscopic secrets, compelled authorities to formally reopen the cold case of Caleb Ortega. 29 years after his disappearance, the file, once relegated to dusty archives, was retrieved and dusted off. A new investigative team formed, comprising law enforcement officials, advanced forensic experts, and, crucially, Dr. Ruth Albright, whose anthropological insights were now indispensable. The objective was clear: to trace the pendant's journey, backward through time and across the vast, intricate networks of the Amazon. This was a monumental undertaking, demanding meticulous effort and a profound reliance on local intelligence and community contacts to piece together its trajectory. Forensic specialists initiated a deep dive into the pendant's residues. The foreign fabric fibers underwent exhaustive analysis, cross-referenced against known textile databases from the mid-1990s. The goal was to definitively link them to Caleb Ortega's possessions, to identify the type of fabric, its weave, and potential dye composition, hoping to reconstruct aspects of his clothing. Simultaneously, the sweat salts were subjected to the most advanced DNA extraction techniques available, a painstaking process aimed at yielding a genetic profile that could be compared against Caleb's family. Every fragment, every molecule, was scrutinized for clues about Caleb's final moments, or the conditions he might have endured. Investigators also revisited the original leads, re-interviewing Marcia Araujo and Tiago Pinedo. Nearly 3 decades had passed, and the passage of time often alters memory. Yet, armed with the tangible evidence of the pendant, the hope was that new details, forgotten recollections, or previously dismissed observations might surface, viewed through the lens of this astonishing new development. Dr. Albright's role became central to bridging the chasm between the outside investigation and the indigenous communities of the Xingu Basin. With her established relationships and deep understanding of cultural protocols, she began the delicate process of inquiring about the pendant. This was not a standard interrogation, but a respectful, patient dialogue, seeking information about items traded years ago, particularly in areas where historical outsider contact might be viewed with caution or even suspicion. The investigation, driven by this singular, tantalizing clue, began to build momentum, slowly and deliberately navigating the immense obstacles towards a definitive answer to Caleb Ortega's fate. The painstaking efforts of the new investigation, particularly Dr. Albright's patient diplomacy, finally yielded a profound breakthrough. After months of careful outreach and respectful dialogue, a group of Xingu elders, gathered in a communal meeting, decided to share a story they had held sacred and largely secret for nearly 3 decades. Their decision was not made lightly, but the persistent, respectful inquiries, coupled with the tangible evidence of the pendant, had created an environment of trust. The elders recounted a specific event from 1996, a memory etched deeply into their collective consciousness. They spoke of intercepting a lone outsider at a forbidden portage, a sacred pathway connecting two waterways, traditionally used only by their people for specific ceremonial or hunting purposes. This portage was a place of spiritual significance, its boundaries strictly observed, and the presence of any non-Indigenous person there was a profound violation. They described a young man, disoriented and seemingly lost, bearing equipment unfamiliar to them yet clearly not a local. His appearance at such a hallowed, restricted site was unprecedented and deeply disturbing. The details provided by the elders were chillingly precise. Their descriptions of the outsider, his general appearance, and the items he carried resonated with the known profile of Caleb Ortega. The realization was stark. The lone outsider at the forbidden portage was almost certainly the missing backpacker. What followed was a critical moment of validation for the investigators. The elders' oral history, passed down through their community, detailed the exact geographical location of this forbidden portage. When these traditional markers were cross-referenced with old GPS data from the original 1996 expedition, an astonishing alignment emerged. The locations perfectly coincided, transforming a long-held community memory into irrefutable, scientifically verifiable evidence. This convergence of ancient knowledge and modern technology proved to be the pivotal moment. What had once been a vague 1996 rumor, perhaps whispers of an outsider seen where no outsider should be, previously dismissed by external authorities as mere jungle lore, now solidified into a concrete, targetable search zone. The elders' full account, as it unfolded in hushed tones, began to paint a grim, horrifying picture of Caleb's final moments. His presence at the forbidden portage, an act of unwitting trespass into sacred ground, had set in motion a tragic confrontation, revealing the true devastating nature of his disappearance. The Amazon had not simply swallowed Caleb Ortega, it had held a secret, now finally brought to light by its oldest guardians. With the forbidden portage now precisely identified, a new expedition was swiftly mounted. Guided by the elders' detailed oral testimony and corroborated by the old GPS coordinates, a specialized team, including forensic anthropologists and local experts, ventured into the previously inaccessible zone. Their objective was grim: to locate any remains, personal effects, or further evidence that could definitively close the 29-year-old case. The Amazon, which had so long held its secrets, was now being asked to surrender its truth. The full horrifying account, as shared by the Xingu elders, painted a stark picture of Caleb Ortega's final moments. He had indeed strayed far from his intended path, driven by an explorer's curiosity, or perhaps simply disoriented by the dense jungle. His presence at the sacred portage, a place of immense spiritual significance and strict tribal boundaries, was an unwitting but profound transgression. The elders recounted the shock and alarm of their ancestors at discovering an outsider in such a hallowed space. A confrontation ensued, born of misunderstanding and the inviolable sanctity of their territory. In the ensuing chaos, Caleb Ortega, a young man far from home and ill-equipped for such an encounter, met his tragic end. His body, they explained, had been left at the site, eventually reclaimed by the ceaseless cycle of the rainforest, leaving only the pendant as a silent testament. Caleb Ortega's disappearance was finally resolved. After nearly 3 decades of agonizing uncertainty, his family received the devastating yet definitive answer to his fate. The pain of loss remained, but it was now coupled with the solemn peace of knowing they could at last begin the process of mourning, their son's story no longer an unresolved mystery, but a tragic chapter now closed. This extraordinary resolution underscored the profound importance of Indigenous knowledge and the critical role of cultural exchange. The elders' willingness to share a story held secret for so long, a narrative passed down through generations, was the singular key that unlocked the cold case. It served as a powerful reminder of the deep wisdom residing within traditional communities and the absolute necessity of respecting their territories and cultural boundaries, particularly in regions as sensitive and complex as the Amazon. The Amazon rainforest, a place of immense power and untamed beauty, had both claimed Caleb Ortega and, through the voices of its oldest guardians, ultimately revealed his fate. His story became a somber testament to the jungle's enduring mysteries and the tragic consequences that can arise when the modern world inadvertently collides with ancient traditions. The documentary closes with the somber truth revealed, a young man's adventure ending in tragedy, brought to light by perseverance and an extraordinary cultural exchange.